Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Gabriele, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Perception Paradox, and today directly from the TechChill Day 0, Day 1 in Riga, Latvia, I'm here with Gabriele Potelunaite.
Hello.
Gabriele.
Hi, Gabriele.
And Gabriele can be known for many different taglines, but I think the most famous right now on LinkedIn, the most prominent is investors. She just joined the new fund, focus on the deep tech startups, the Baltic and Polish diaspora. And she's ready to write down some tickets. So Gabriele, welcome to Perception.
Thanks for having me. I've been waiting for this moment for a while.
Amazing. So it's finally happening. I'm very glad we made it in this nice cafe, enjoying our drinks. So how are you today? You already had quite a rough start. You arrived to Latvia already early. So we had some investor dinners, right? How is it going?
It's been very exciting. As always, I think it's always these conferences and it's very socially intense and overwhelming, but it's always very exciting. So I get to, hang out, catch up with people like you with us. So it's been lovely so far. And I always like these Baltic events because I think they're they're relatively intimate. There's once a year you can see all of your good friends, all the investors, founders, etc. So it's always exciting to be back. Yeah.
Sometimes even more often than once a year, actually. I would say,
I
right?
just try to skip the rest.
But anyway, talking about that, so congratulations on your new role, joining a new fund. Can you elaborate more about your transitions from the fund to right now your latest role and focus?
Of course. So my pleasure to elaborate more. And so Balnord, so I joined them 2 months ago, so it's very recent. In the investment team, so Balnord, we focus, you covered it very well. We look at deep tech companies, everything that falls into space tech, dual use technology, health, bio, and all of that space. Essentially, we also look at AI companies or what we call data-driven software. But I'd say in the context, we don't prioritize these sort of companies because we think that there's the European tech future is more in the deep tech space. And we invest around seed stage. So starting with a few million tickets, follow-ons up to 7 million per company. So it's a very concentrated portfolio, a really hands-on approach to work with founders. And indeed, we have this kind of Polish, Baltic diaspora angle. But we can also invest in other European countries as long as the companies fall kind of in the deep tech sectors that we're looking at.
It's an exciting journey because before you were investing also in more early stage companies, right? So for you, it's also a growth journey when it comes to your investor role.
It is.
And what brought you to the investment field from the early beginning? How did you end up in the venture capital world?
It's I actually have it's been super random. So it was there was no plan to end up in venture capital. I didn't even know what a venture capital essentially is. So for me, it was actually I was studying neuroscience and I went into AI. And then actually when I was doing my master's in AI in Amsterdam, there was this VC fellowship that appeared because some of my friends were doing it, and I was like, let me just try, see what this is. So after that, I was like, oh, it's actually you can do quite interesting things. You look at companies, you analyze performance, you're meeting so many founders and people building things, and I was like, maybe that could be something that I would be interested in exploring. And then I actually started applying for different VC funds, but then it was COVID times, nothing actually materialized. I was still doing my master's, and then actually I was in the right time in the right place. And the first one that I worked for, they were looking for someone who speaks Lithuanian, can run kind of the Lithuanian market for them, and has some sort of VC and technical background. And I mean, I just said that
you think all the book.
Yeah, but it's also I don't think the company should.
But not done there next to me.
It's meeting, but it was more, and I really like the team that offered me the first job at VC, and then I was like, yeah, why not? And it's been it's the 5th year, I think, for me.
Wow. Oh my goodness, time flies actually. When you mentioned COVID, it seems like it was 2 years ago.
Exactly.
But then if we look back, it was 5 years ago already.
I think the whole timeline is blurred for me as well.
Yeah, that's wild. All right, so what do you like about being an investor and about the space you're in?
Yeah, well,
because it does sound if you look from the outside, it does look like a very sexy and very much in a high demand position environment to be a part of, especially for very early graduate.
Yeah, true.
And what keeps you still feel
A very good question. I ask myself that every single day. Like, but I'm still here. No, but essentially, in reality, I think it's like, you're very right. Like, I think now it became a very hot field to be in. And like, I think there's so many people that try to break into VCs, and you see so many, like, activities online, people like building and trying to, like, crack the code for people are like, how do you break into VC, how to get a job, whatever. So I think when I was joining, it wasn't as competitive, and I don't think it was like as romanticized as an industry. I think, but I think it's it's a tough one. Okay, but maybe coming back to like what I like about the role essentially, or like what I like about the job in VC. I think it's like my favorite parts is actually just like meeting founders, which I think it's like just overall like meeting people who take big risks, and essentially they don't go for like very comfortable jobs or comfortable de-risk decisions, but they actually decide to dedicate their life in building something very significant for for the world or for humankind or whatnot. And they take the risk, and I think they're just like working with really passionate individuals. I think that is something that really drives me. And obviously also getting you're always sort of on top of everything that is happening within the tech sector, within like all these different sectors. You're at like the forefront of all the development. And obviously there's other sides that I'm not a huge fan of venture. And I think that like the industry could improve in many ways. But if I could highlight the main thing, I think it's just like working.
What can be improved in the industry?
Yeah, well, where do I begin? So I think it's like, I think European venture industry overall has quite a few issues. So if I start naming, a few, so like, I think there's quite a lot of, because there's so much state money and like a bunch of like governmental LPs are investing into VC funds, which you don't, for instance, have in the US or like in Israel, you have like LPs that are a bit more professionalized, let's say, right? So they really pick the right partners, like the right GPs and the right funds to invest in, people that know what they're doing, etc. Whereas I feel like in Europe, what's happening, there's so much state money and they just have quotas where they need to, allocate like, hundreds of millions in Poland, 100 million in Italy, whatever. And then obviously you have very good managers in every single country, or good funds. So then you end up allocating people like money to like suboptimal funds and suboptimal people. And those suboptimal funds and people end up investing in suboptimal companies. Okay, so let's say if you need to deploy like 500 million in Italy in a year, how many really good companies come out in 1 year? And then you end up just investing in anything, And then I think also like, and then we've seen that, and I think that we had it in the Baltics as well, also with like bad funds or people that I have, like when the field is not professionalized yet, people also give like founders really weird terms, and really like crazy liquidation preferences. They try to hold like 50% of the company as an investor, and like all these like weird things that we don't necessarily see anymore that much in the region, because I think it's professionalized to some extent. But I think you'd be surprised, like, 'cause I still see it in Poland a lot now that I got a bit more exposure. So and I think overall, VC industry still has like, if I can add on what still also doesn't work, is like, I think we still have a long way to go on like the whole diversity question. And I don't want to sound like, everyone kind of tries to address the same topic, or like, I don't want to bore anyone, but I think still if you look at like most GPs and most partners and everyone, they're all white men, middle-aged white men essentially. And I think there's also there has been like a big churn of a lot of females leaving the industry, leaving venture industry. And I think so it requires a lot more attentive look inside and reflection to why all these women decide to leave,
That's a question I think we all can ponder and should ponder on and raise the discussions for sure.
Yeah.
But talking then about, so we just covered a bit your opinion about what's happening within this field, how we would improve. We need more diversity. We need more look within our structures as well. But when it comes to the investments, we always like to also romanticize and emphasize this perfect founder, right? Does that perfect founder exist? And what is a perfect founder that you would like to invest into mean for you?
Yeah, it's a very tough question. I think so I don't think a perfect founder exists. Short answer. Probably yes. I don't know. I think it really depends. I think the model or the definition of perfection is going to be very different per stage, per industry that they're building. Because I think a very perfect B2B SaaS founder is really not the perfect space tech founders, for instance, or biotech founders. So I think that's gonna depend per industry. But okay, so I think okay, if I say what I look for in founders, whatever, independently maybe from the industry and the stage, I think it's always I think it's crazily good execution. So that's maybe one. And I think you can assess that and you can see how fast someone moves and how driven they are and how passionate they are about something. I think like they need to be obsessed with like what they're doing. So
Obsessed with the problem or what they're selling or what they're building.
maybe both, I guess. But like I think the obsession or like that crazy passionate interest needs to, what you said, like you need to be very interested in whatever industry you're building. Otherwise you might give up, because it's not going to be easy. So I think that, and then people also like really good people attract outstanding people around them. So I think these are the things that you can assess actually relatively early on. And I think it's also like, I think that's another thing with venture. Everyone tries to like say that everyone is making such like data-driven decisions. I think that's not how it works actually in practice. I think it's also a lot about like gut feeling. And I think if I have to look back, I feel like over like my time, especially with my previous one, where we invested very actively, I spoke to like hundreds of founders, like over different calls or like meetings in person, whatever. So I think like once you speak to that certain amount of people, then you can very clearly, quickly say once someone is exceptional and very good. And that you can tell in like having one meeting and just like meeting the person. And I think also like your gut, like I guess like you need to train to be able to then make like gut.
Yeah, but maybe it's more like also identifying the patterns or some kind of
more like become quicker, maybe to like catch on
the next dots.
Yeah.
All right. So when it comes to the founders, especially really reviewed and spoke with so many early stage founders before you're in your previous roles, what are the major red flags you see in the early stage companies?
Not fast enough. That's the thing. So people are too slow, So like they work on like to develop the perfect product, to ship the perfect thing, to just realize and no one needs their product and there's no customers and there's no even like demand for it and no one's gonna pay for it. So I'd say like the most common thing that I've observed is that people, they come up with an idea. They're like, oh, this is a perfect idea. Instead of speaking to their customers and personas, they just spend all that time kind of like head down developing the perfect product. Because people think that like the moment the perfect product gets shipped, everyone will start caring about it. And then you're going to make millions. Well, it never happens that way. So I think it's like, first, always speak to your target customer. Really find that does the problem exist and is there even a demand for your solution? And secondly, I think people are also like get stuck. I think if something is not working, you need to pivot and you need to pivot quite quickly. And it's always obviously this balance, maybe like when to kind of like stick to a plan and when to completely change the trajectory. But then I think anyways, you need to kind of like be very, very fast about that. And then I think also like people raise too much capital too quickly and then that also burns a lot of teams. And I've seen that from like my kind of like surrounding and like in my circles, because I think it's like some of these AI companies that get like, insane pre-seed rounds, having nothing to show for it, that it's like you obviously shoot yourself in the foot because you'll never be able to live up to the next valuation for your next round. And then you hire too quickly, you hire too senior people, you start burning cash. And then I think it also messes with your mind. So I think it's like, it always makes sense to start with a bit of like, what's the word for it? Maybe like not excess, but rather short, a bit of like a short.
Okay.
So like start operating on that mindset.
So there are different ways of funding for startups, right? So what kind of startup is a good fit for VC funding?
Yeah, so I think so it's essentially, it needs to be a company that can grow to like crazy numbers, right? And it can be like potentially like a 500 million exit.
Yeah.
Okay. The smallest would be like at least 100 mil. Then better if it's 500 million, and best if it's like, a unicorn, decacorn, whatever type of scenario. But then it needs to have that potential. So I think that's the VC. I think the industry has also shifted and changed.
Yeah.
And I think people are also backing companies that not necessarily like, let's say VC backable companies, because I think this is just like such a tiny percentage of actual companies. But then because you have too many funds, you have too much capital, so then it all kind of like trickles down. Yeah.
Okay. If you would have right now to invest your own capital and your own money, which industry, emerging sector would you go for?
My own capital. So I'd say I'd go probably still for like health and kind of like bio. Okay, so everything, because I generally think it's like, I can pretend that like, I care about like supply chain or logistics, or I care about space or whatever. I find it interesting, but I wouldn't necessarily like, place my money there. I think what I generally care about is people and humans and trying to improve human beings, lives. And I think there's still so much we can do in this space. So I think I would say, I would probably bet on something more in like health and biospace, because that's just the simple answers, because that's something that I find the most interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Talking about where you would bet your money and talking about your own founder career, right? But on education, where you potentially would not put your money. Tell me about you.
It was it's a very short-lived founding experience.
Tell me, so how was your founder journey? You tried last year or you established a too early platform that supports founders about doing their fundraising, for helping with their pitch decks. Can you share how did it go? Are you still running it or what did you learn?
So I think we sort of liquidated it already, not officially, but like
Yeah.
we shut down the platform, unfortunately. So, okay, the idea that came to actually a friend of mine who I co-founded it with, we were like, okay, there's so many people, and like, as I said, like in earlier stages when they found their companies, they just don't take the right steps, right? So they don't speak to their target customers. They build out a pitch deck. They start speaking to investors only to realize like there's so many initial steps that haven't taken that could even like actually help them and get them to build the right thing and kind of like have like a good storytelling, etc. And then we're like, okay, there's a bunch of these like consultancies that exist that, you know, like they take like a share of your raised capital and then they can help you like build your pitch deck, help you fundraise. But then that's, then you're kind of like relying on that company potentially like raising the rounds, etc. So we were like, can we make some sort of like democratized access so people don't need to pay like crazy sums, but you still tap into like a bigger population, a bigger like community. And our idea was also like, how do you tap into those people that are not necessarily building something at the moment, but they're thinking about building. They only still have full-time jobs, but they're thinking about building. And maybe how can you like, shape their thinking, what it means to build a VC business, get together with other founders, etc. I think what we ran into an issue that was like, so at first when we just launched it, we had actually quite a few paying customers that decided to pay, like so €300, I think, for like a 3-month access. And we're like, okay, this is working. We're out to something. But then that kind of just completely dropped. And then we tried to like pivot, tried out a bit of a different angle. That also didn't really work. And lots of lessons learned. It was a very enjoyable process. But I think what we learned is that in this industry, it's so difficult to build because your ICP, so like the customer persona that we were targeting, these founders, and like very strong founders and people that are building like, successful companies have no problem with your raising. They're the ones that have the money. And then I think the people that you're targeting, they don't necessarily have the funds yet, at least to pay you. So this creates this sort of like mismatch. But I think I still believe there's a space to kind of like help. And I think that's still where actually like, okay, like how can you actually like help these early stage founders and somehow, and we were, but I don't think it's going to be one of those businesses where you can actually like make a lot of finance from. Essentially at the moment.
Okay. You shut it down, you tried it, you learned a lot.
Yeah. It was good ride. It's a very good run, but it was like, you'll know probably. I know. Yeah. It's like it was just nice to like actually create something.
It's very nice. I think what we've learned also launching Scout Hub, which was kind of about closing as well, but still keeping it open for scouting. But we wanted to build this larger scouting out there, right? And there is a huge demand. There is a huge potential. It's really not hard to gather the scouts. And then, yes, you get to those partnerships with investors. But the problem is not there. Like, such a human connection business. You can try to do the quantities and volume, but it's not about that because then it loses the value and the essence. Yeah. And I think what we've learned is you believe that we share similar outcomes and learnings as we launch at a similar time.
Yeah, exactly.
That know when to call it quit and know when to pivot because your inner ambition wants to continue. Yeah. And it's hard to admit the failure, but you really have to learn how to admit that and how to say it, how to let it go. Because you see the traction, you see that something is working, but at the end of the day, the question is, is it working the direction you want it to go, right?
Exactly.
Because there are different philanthropic reasons you could continue launching that, but that's aligned with your business goals.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Well, I think I think that's the most difficult one, right? Like as you say, like when do you let go?
When do you call it quit?
Yeah.
Sometimes we held too long to our past experiences. Yeah.
I actually forget some sort of like, as you said, like validation that like, okay, the problem exists and everyone face it, but it's very difficult to then still, even if the problem exists, like find the right way to build a product. And
that's why we have product market fit, right?
Yeah.
So talking about your career and life and all the things you've been doing, we also met on multiple different encounters through your career. Is there anything you wish you knew before you started your venture capital career?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. I think so. Maybe like, I wouldn't say that like necessarily I wish I knew those things back in the days, because I think it's like there's some beauty about like, being naive, approaching everything. Oh yeah, it's like, now I'm way more cynical and way less naive than I was when I was younger and entering the field. But I think that helped because I was so fascinated and I was so excited about everything. I think maybe answering the question differently, like there's something that like I wish I knew, but I know now. I think that like no one knows what they're doing. And I think I used to really like think that like, oh, 30 figures or people, at like high positions in certain companies, funds or whatever, they know what's up. They know their stuff. And they're like, I wouldn't question them essentially, but I would always question myself, and I would always blame myself that like, if something is like clear, it's maybe because I'm stupid and I don't get it. It's not that the person is not explaining it well. And I think over years, I kind of realized that like everyone is just trying to figure stuff out as they go. And no one actually knows stuff. So some people are just very good at like pretending and I think faking till they make it type of vibe. And others are a bit more honest about not knowing. So I think it's like I would tell maybe myself to like it's fine to not know and ask questions. Yeah, I think I used to be afraid when I was younger to not appear stupid. I wouldn't understand stuff, but I just wouldn't ask. Yeah,
Coming from the roots where coming from, where you always had to know the right answer, I was trying to reflect some time ago as well.
Yeah,
because it seems like a pattern in the Baltic states. Really? Raised, I think, yeah. You never raise hand if you don't know the answer, right? Sure. You always have to know the answer. That was still the post-generation that we were experiencing. So I felt like that was a connection within that.
Because you're right. Because if you say something that is actually like wrong, but you would be called out for being.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe I had this some sort of like shock.
Potentially generational trauma. That from the Soviet Union. Talking about founders and traits. So, what do you think? What kind of traits is most underrated when it comes to startups and founders?
What trait is most
Underrated? Yeah.
I think, but I'm trying to think. I think probably like most things that I'm gonna say, they're well rated among the VCs. Let me think. Maybe like speed of. Okay, so one metric that I really track, and I don't know if it's like underrated among the other founders, is that actually I know, for instance, I know actually a better one. So now as I was thinking, I think a lot of VCs really shy away from solo founders. And everyone always says like, oh no, we only invest in teams and it only needs to be like, a founding duo, trio, whatever. And I never actually thought that way necessarily. I think I thought that way because I was like socialized to think that way. But then I started like actually digging into research and investing. I backed quite a few solo founders, also back at it like in my previous fund. And then I realized if like one spectacular and outstanding individual will manage, and they can manage even better some of the teams. So I would disagree that I think some people, like I know for a fact funds that just don't never invest if it's not a full founding team. But I would say that's obviously it's very case by case dependent. But I'd say that like if one outstanding individual that has a very clear vision, execute well, they will hire the team that they need and they will be able to build a fantastic company. So yeah.
Nice. So what's ahead for you right now with Balnor, your new position? What are your big visions? Berlin. Okay, so you're going to be established in Berlin, exploring the markets, right? Nice.
So for me, like personally, I think it's also exciting to, but you'll understand it because we had the same kind of like, touring around the world, not having a stable place to live. So I'm excited to like enter a new chapter, and I think it was like, I'm so grateful for that chapter because like you meet so many people, you get out of your comfort zone. It can get lonely, because you're always like pushing yourself to be alone in all of these like random places. But I think now I'm excited to like enter a chapter where I have more stability, more routine, and have a bit more like rooted. Like, I mean, to some extent, probably in 6 months, we're going to be somewhere again. But at least for a short time, I think it's like entering that sort of like nice, more stable chapter. I think that's what excites me. Yeah.
Amazing. And I have this tradition in the podcast to ask every guest to leave with a thought to ponder. What would be your thought for the listeners right now to ponder through the day?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. Maybe I'd say, oh my God. Oh God, it's like, it's one of those, it's like, it's kind of like a lot of say something that is like,
no pressure and keep it so easy,
Okay, something for them to ponder about. Maybe, okay, this is going to be very kind of random, but I think I was reflecting that I don't, okay, so I make certain decisions and then I get into certain situations and I don't then question myself later on, like, does this still serve me? And this is still something that I want and I need? And then so I encourage maybe everyone to just like, continuously like ask yourself and check in with yourself to really ask like whatever maybe what worked for you like a month ago and it doesn't now, and it's fine. Because we always need to kind of like, we're always evolving, we're always changing, and maybe like always to reassess and check in with yourself. Does it still serve me?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
That's a great way to finish the episode. So we're saying again hi and thank you for listening straight from TechChill. If you have never heard of TechChill, you should check it out. It's happening in Latvia, Riga. We really like with Gabriele to reconnect here. One of the conferences we meet every year. And I think when you will be listening this episode, we will be already recovering and getting our well-deserved rest after TechChill. And we wish you a great day. Thank you for listening and thank you for joining, Gabriele.